This is the ultimate blueprint to qualify and earn in the solo cash cups. This is not some dragged out bullshit guide where I sell you a masterclass halfway through the video. So I'm not gonna lie to you and say that anyone could qualify and anyone could make earnings. But I will promise that by watching this video and implementing the advice, you will maximize your chances of getting the best placement possible. I put all of my knowledge from VOD reviewing thousands of solo cash cup games and my own experience from getting earnings and getting top 100 placements into this one single guide. First, we need to understand what it will take to qualify or make earnings. This is crucial information, so pay attention. In the Solo Cash Cup, the top 600 players from every region will qual to round 2. It doesn't matter if you're playing NA, EU or even Middle East, but the amount of points that you need is a lot different. The bigger the region, the more points you will need. On EU, which is my region, you will need about 300 points to qual. On NA Central, it's 270. And on OCE you will need around 230. So let's take a look at the point format. You can earn a total of 60 placement points for a win and 2 points per kill. And of course in the future this format might change, so if you have a different format right now, just look at what it is. But the current format that we have right now is very rewarding for pretty bad games. So you can get a decent amount of points for getting a top 20 or a top 30. A top 30 gives you 20 points and a top 20 gives you 30 points. I always like the idea of counting in wins. So how many wins do you need to qualify? If you get 5 0-kill wins on EU, you will get around 300 points and qual. You could also get the same result by getting 10 top 20 placements, because a top 20 gives you 30 points, which is basically half a win. So let's say you start your tourney and you win your first game. Now you need 4 more wins to qualify. But now let's say you get 2 top 20s in game 2 and 3. Then you have 2 out of 5 wins. Because 2 top 20s is equal to 1 win. So that's how you count in wins. If you get 1 win and 1 top 10 in every hour, then you will qualify. You could also start a tourney by W keying. So let's say you get a decent 15 kill win. 15 kills is 30 points, which is basically half a win. So you will have 90 points in total, which is 1.5 wins out of 5. So you need 3.5 more wins. Now when you qualify to finals, you need about 300 points to make earnings. And that's the same in every region, so EU, NA or even OCE. So that's about 5 wins. Okay, now that we understand the format, we need to find a fitting playstyle to get these wins. This format is very placement heavy, with 30 kills being equal to 1 win. So if you want to get the best placement possible, you should be playing ultra passive. Don't fight off spawn. Avoid all mid-game fights. And if you do find yourself in a fight, then try to disengage with a void mask. Now if you are a decent fighter and you know how to W key, then it's okay to go a little crazy in your first game. But most players qual based on their consistency, and they don't really drop high kill games. 10 kills often being the max. Winning games in the Solo Cash Cup is hard enough, so just focus on that. So now I will reveal the entire game plan to win games in solos. We'll split it up into 3 parts. Early game, mid game and end game. For your early game, it's important that you pick a drop spot where you can survive 9 out of 10 games. If you die off spawn 50% of the time, then you're not going to have enough games to make it to end game and qual. When you pick a drop spot, figure out the exact location you want to be landing and create a drop map. This could take quite a bit of time, so you could also use an existing drop map. Just know that other people might be using the same drop map, giving them the same glide. Now remember, your goal off spawn is to survive 9 out of 10 games. So while you're gliding mid-air, you should be scouting to see where the players around you are landing. If someone is cutting off your looting path, then go in a different direction. There's no need to fight off spawn. If you know the area very well, you should be able to get a decent loadout every game. You don't need a purple pump, you don't need a purple AR, as long as you have a pump and you have an AR. The priority in looting should look like this. First, you need to get any type of gun. So it doesn't matter what type of gun it is, as long as you have one. The second priority is mats. Then you need to focus on getting a shotgun. And when you have a shotgun and you have mats, then you need to focus on heals. So let's say you open one chest and you get an AR. So now the next priority is to get a shotgun as fast as possible. Especially if there are multiple players nearby, because if they have a shotgun and you don't, it could be game over. 50-50ing off spawn is the worst idea ever, because a 50-50 basically means that you will lose 50% of your games, and you don't want that. You gotta make sure that you're taking 0 risks in the early game. You also don't want to spend a long time looting up, because you have to rotate early. So if you have a shotgun, AR, some mats and some heals, don't spend another 5 minutes upgrading your loadout. That's wasted time that could get you killed in the mid game. The mid game of the Solo Cash Cup is a bit tricky. especially if you're in low to mid elo, because people will W key you for zero reason and grief your entire game for 2 points. That's why you need to make sure that you're rotating towards that side as fast as possible, like even if it means that you're using your mobility items. Don't even worry about surge, because in most of your games you will not need any. Maybe if you're playing in high elo or finals, but we'll get to that. It's fine to be low on metal in the mid game, as long as you cap out your wood and brick. There are so many good bricks and trees this season, you should be able to get 1000 mats super easily. Don't rotate through the most congested areas. Stay low key and stay super aware of your surroundings. If you have a decent loadout, then just find a good bush or building to sit in and just chill out. If you are low on metal, then you could find some place to farm. But if you use the playstyle that I will recommend in this endgame, you're not gonna need much metal. Like 100 or 200 is enough. Metal is pretty hard to come by in this map, so only go for it if it's free. In the endgame you have 50-50 zones and moving zones. If it pulls max distance in the 50-50 zones, you need to rotate early. Don't go too late. In these zones it's important to remember where dead side is. If you go through the dead side in the 50-50 zones, you'll have some of the most freest rotates ever. If the games are stacked, just use your void mask a couple of times. Void mask, box up again and again. This way you're not wasting any of your heals and you get to the next zone a lot faster. Now in the end game this is where most people mess up, because they try to play just as passive as in the early and mid game. But this doesn't always work, because in order to get like a top 5 or an actual win, you're going to need some refreshes. And unless you're playing aggressively for it, you will not get these refreshes consistently. You don't want to rely on getting a lucky kill somewhere. So don't be afraid to smack on people's walls, spray people nearby you, or even start box fighting some kid. If you see someone that is boxed up in wood, that's a good target. If someone is rotating out of zone, that's a target. If someone opens their cone to use their void mask, that is a target. If you have below 1000 mats, you should start actively looking for refreshes. And if you have below 500, you should really start to worry about it. In the moving zones, you need the right timing to go for a refresh. The two best times are during your rotate and when you get frontside. So if you're backside, just focus on zones. That's not the right time to go for a refresh. The earlier in the endgame that you get a refresh, the better the refresh will be. If you wait too long, you might only get some siphon mats. So in the 50-50 zones, first moving, second moving, those are the best times. But if you wait till third moving or even the last zone, you probably played too passively this game and you might only get like a top 20 placement. That's half a win. Pretty good, but not great. Taking height in solos has always been pretty easy. And it's also pretty easy to win from height. But in this current meta, you gotta be aware of people using void mask to go up. I think the best time to go for height is in third moving, right after you get a refresh. It's probably not the best idea to take height when you're low on mats. Just play mid ground and get a refresh first. In the final zone you need to be either on low ground or on high ground. Mid ground always gets fucked, so in third moving start thinking about your win condition. Otherwise you're not gonna get the win, which gives so many placement points. Like if you're in the top 15 or top 10 situation, you already scored most of the placement points in that game. So don't be afraid to take a little risk. That is the entire game plan. Now it would be best if you practice this game plan in scrims, to kinda get a feel of it and adjust it based on your drop spot and everything. You also need to keep in mind that every game is different, so you need to be flexible. Just try to stick to this game plan as closely as possible. Now for this next part I want to talk about the 5 most common mistakes people make in their solo cash cup games. Any of these mistakes could cost you the entire game, no matter how good you are at following the game plan. You need to make sure that you're super alert at all times. If you have bad awareness, someone will surprise you and you will lose that game. So you gotta pay attention and maybe put your game sound a little higher. Number 2 is fighting. If you don't have the best fighting skills right now, it will be pretty hard to handle someone W keying you in the mid game. For those people it is especially important to be ultra aware and don't rotate through the most congested areas. But if you do have some decent fighting skills, you gotta make sure that you're not overconfident. Because there is a risk that you will take too many fights and never disengage, because you feel like you could handle it. Just remember, if you want to win the game, there's zero reason to fight in the early or mid game. You only get 2 points for a kill, and it could cost you the game. There's no shame in disengaging. Number 3. Void Mask. The Void Mask is a little bit of a tricky item. It's kinda slow, you have to throw the TP, and wait for it to move further and then use it. So in that time, someone could jump in your box and spray you. If you try building, now you're not holding the Void Mask anymore, which means that you can't use the teleport right away. So the Void Mask has a lot of delay on it. That's why it's very important to be super careful with using this item. Make sure that nobody can jump in your box by resetting your cone or building a floor. You also need to know where your Void Mask is going, and you need to pop it a little bit higher in the air, so you have some time to react to where you're landing. Mistake number 4. Rotate timing. Timing your rotates is something that comes with experience. Sometimes you need to rotate early, and other times you need to rotate late. If there are a lot of players nearby and you need to rotate far, then you probably don't want to be the first person moving. That's just gonna get you focused. But if you rotate too late, now people might focus you because they got inside zone before you and now they're holding you. This is very situational, but I hope you try to get the right timing on the rotates. Now mistake number 5 is spending too many mats. You gotta be a bit conservative with your mats. Because if you run out of builds, it's basically game over. Like then you're forced to do something desperate like jumping in someone's box. And this goes for the mid game, but also the end game. So try not to waste any builds. In the early game it's more about farming than it is about conserving your mats. Now I want to talk about the importance of the first hour of your tournament. In other formats, the last hour was always the most important part of the tourney. But I think in this solo cash cup it's all about the first 1 to 1.5 hours. Because if you get about 100 or 110 points in your first hour, you're off to a great start. And the tourney could go great. But let's say your first game was like a top 7 with 3 kills, so you didn't get the win. You only gained like 50 points in your first game. And then in your second game you die off spawn. And in your third game you don't get a refresh, so now you die in 19th. So you're at around 80 points in your first hour, which is decent but not great. Now for the second hour of the tournament, you will have a ton of people W keying for points. This means people will be a lot more aggressive in the mid game. So in this situation, it's even more important to stay low key and avoid players. But on the flip side, your lobbies are gonna be a lot less stacked, so you can get some free placement points. You just gotta make sure that you're not gonna get W keyed in the mid game, and you don't get another top 20 placement, so you actually get the top 5 or a win. Because just like everyone else in your game, you're behind on points and you need to catch up. You could also be the one W keying, but the skill level of players is probably not that bad, even if you think you're in low to mid elo. It's still going to be like 10 times harder than in your first game. Now if you do get into high elo in your first hour, or you're playing finals, the games will be a lot more stacked. People don't W key for no reason, because it's just not worth it. This is when you might need to think about Surge. If your lobby is super stacked, you gotta get some Surge. Even if it doesn't become active, it's better to be safe than sorry. Getting enough Surge in solos is super easy, because you don't need much. Instead of hiding in a bush like you do in low or mid elo, now you just gotta sit somewhere on a mountain getting tags on players rotating past. It's not that hard. Now let's talk about the warm-up. How long should you warm up and what should you do? What I personally found best is to keep the warm-up as short as possible. On the day of the tournament, you want to keep the most amount of energy and focus reserved for the tournament itself. I think the warm-up should be focused on your aim. Because if you're pretty decent at the game, your mechanics should always be pretty good. Like even without a long warm-up. But your aim definitely needs warming up. Like it's super important that you can hit your shots in a tourney. I really think it's best if you spend 30 to 90 minutes working on your aim. And a maximum of 15 minutes on your pure mechanics. If you want to do some 1v1s against good players, that's fine too. But you definitely don't want to spend all day grinding if you want to optimize for the best placement possible. So the maximum is a 2-hour warm-up and the minimum is 30 minutes of aim training. That could be in Kovacs or in-game. And of course, you can't forget to do some wrist exercises before you hop online. You don't want to get injured. Some people say that you need to get a good night's sleep before the tournament, but that's bullshit. You always need to get good sleep. Thinking that one night of better or worse sleep is going to change anything is just stupid. So fix your sleep schedule in general. Sleeping well one day before the tourney is a joke. And the same goes for if you always have pretty good sleep and you have like one night of poor sleep, it's not gonna ruin your entire tournament. But what I do think is important is exercise. I can actually feel a noticeable improvement in my gameplay after working out. So on the tournament day, definitely do one workout. Even if it's just a placebo effect, exercise is never going to make you perform worse. Now let's talk about stress, because some of you might get very nervous about playing the solo cash cup. You can feel a lot of pressure to do good, but this will achieve the exact opposite. You will actually play worse because you stress too much. I found that the best mindset to have going into the tournament is that you're going to try your best. If you are good enough, then you will qualify. If you're not good enough, then you won't. And that's okay, because losing is just a part of the winning process. You just need to go back in VOD reviews and look at your weaknesses and mistakes, and try to fix them before the next tourney. Like, that's the whole concept of Fortnite competitive. So you gotta stop being so afraid of messing up and making mistakes. Like, constantly worrying about what could go wrong is not gonna help you either. Like, it's going to make everything 10 times harder. Just focus on trying your best, and whatever happens, happens. Now, visualization is a little bit controversial. You might think that it doesn't work. But leading up to the solo victory cups, where I got my first earnings, I tried this technique. Like, I visualized me winning the game and getting 100 points. I visualized how I would feel to get earnings. And then it happened. I'm not saying this will work, I'm saying it worked for me, and you could try it out for yourself. So just before the tournament, just visualize that you win the tournament or that you qualify and get earnings. It will only take a couple of minutes. Well, there you have it, the ultimate guide to solo cash cups. If you think this video was helpful, then please return the favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and if you could write like a small comment in the comment section, even if it's just like a W, I would really appreciate it. Now I wish you the best of luck in the next cash cup, and I will catch you in another video. Peace.